Ms. Gottemoeller, I wanted to ask, I think you were asked this earlier, so I apologize. I was watching on TV and I caught the tail end of it, but just want to be clear for the record. My understanding is, and I just want to reiterate it, you've stated definitively here today that if Russia doesn't agree to make further limitations on strategic nuclear weapons, the administration will not make unilateral reductions.
Sir, as I said, the administration has committed, and the President also, in talking about how to pursue further reductions, has said that we will pursue a treaty with the Russian Federation. I correct myself, it was actually Secretary Kerry, and Senator Corker was quite correct to point out that he recently sent a letter in that regard. And further, I'm able to say that unilateral reductions are simply not on the table.
Okay, so not on the table now, but just the administration commits that they will not undertake unilateral reductions?
Sir,
Is that the position of the administration?
Sir, what I can say is that they're not on the table.
But not on the table signifies that it's not being considered today. You can't, I understand that you're not the president, but you can't state here today unequivocally that there will never be under this administration a unilateral reduction in our strategic nuclear capability?
They haven't come up, they're not being considered.
At this time. But you can't rule them out. I mean, in essence, that's not a statement that's come from this White House to say that will never happen, correct?
Sir, I can say that, that unilateral reductions are simply not on the table. That's what I can say.
Well, unilateral reductions are not on the table signifies to me that they're not being currently considered, but it leaves the door open to them potentially being considered. And again, I understand that you don't have the authority to make that decision. You simply execute the policy of the administration. And, but apparently it's not the policy of the administration to rule them out in the future. It is only the policy of the administration to say that they are not on the table today, is my perception of your answer.
Senator, may I just add one comment there?
Yeah, of course.
You know, I think it's very important to bear in mind that there may be a number of reasons why we would undertake reductions. For example, in our ICBM force, the Air Force, for example, may determine that an ICBM or a couple of ICBMs are a safety danger and, you know, could explode. This is entirely a hypothetical, but I'm just saying that it's important to know that we may take reductions in a number of different ways, and we wouldn't want to have to call up the Russians.
Let me be clear. I'm talking about militarily significant reductions, not the need of 3 or 4 individual units that may be malfunctioning and need to be replaced. So what I'm discussing here, and so to be clear, what I'm talking about is significant, militarily significant reductions. And the point I'm trying to get at is I do not support unilateral reductions by the United States as an effort of goodwill to the world. And you've stated to us here today that the policy of the administration is that it's not on the table. And that indicates to me, and I don't mean to put words in your mouth, and I know it's not your policy. Your job is to execute the policy of the administration. But that indicates to me that while it's not being considered today, it is something that could potentially be considered in the future. To me, that is not definitive. I don't blame you for that statement. I just understand, but it's important for me to understand that the position of the administration is unilateral reductions are not being considered at this time. But so far, I have not had anyone in the administration rule out future significantly reduction or significant militarily significant reductions in the future if they feel it's appropriate, and that was important for me to get on the record. And if I'm incorrect about that being the position of the administration, then I would hope to hear from somebody in the administration to clarify that. I don't want to finish here today without asking you about compliance, and again, I think Senator Corker's asked you this, but my fundamental question is our assessment that Russia is in compliance with its current armed control treaty obligations, with the current obligations? Are they in compliance?
Sir, there are some areas where we have concerns about Russian compliance. The CFE treaty, for example, Russia ceased implementing the treaty in 2007, and we've taken countermeasures, legal countermeasures to respond to that. So there are some cases where we are concerned about Russian compliance, no question about it.
What about the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty?
Well, I think that it's important to note that we consider all of the treaties and agreements out there to have some issues associated with them, with many countries around the world. And that is why our compliance report is sent up every year in various versions, unclassified, secret, and top secret, which gives you a full picture of what the compliance situation is with treaties and agreements for all countries where we have concerns. So, sir, there are, I think, some great opportunities to sit down. I've welcomed the opportunity to brief you always. And on your previous question, too, I wanted to say that we're always ready to consult and brief this committee and the Senate whenever you have any concerns.
Just on the issue of compliance, and I'll wrap up, the reason why that's important, and again, I fully understand that your job is to execute the policy administration, so I don't blame you individually for any of this. But I just wanted everyone to understand that the reason the compliance issue is so important, in particular to me, is because I think the American public, besides the member of Congress, have a right to know. And here's why. Because compliance is critical in terms of assessing future treaty possibilities with someone. It is tough to enter into future treaties with people that aren't complying with existing ones. It's tough to enter into future agreements that you can trust in with countries that have a history of trying to evade their previous and existing obligations. And for us as policymakers who are ultimately asked to ratify these treaties, it's important that the public be aware of the administration's assessment on this. So we'll have a further conversation in the appropriate settings about that, but I really personally believe, and I hope that you agree, that the public has a right to know whether or not the U.S. government believes that Russia is in violation or of noncompliance of any of these treaties, and I hope we can talk about that further. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. I will say that we absolutely agree with you on compliance, and that it is very important for the public also to have a view as to what's going on with compliance with countries around the world. I will also pledge to you that we continue to work assiduously on compliance issues. Again, we've had some good luck in certain cases. Mr. Rose was involved in a case a few years ago where through his diplomatic efforts he was able to resolve some compliance concerns we had with the Chinese concerning their participation in the CWC. But I think we don't enter into these treaties as a favor to anybody, certainly not as a favor to the Russians. We enter into them because they are actually serving our national security interests, and they will continue to do so, or we won't enter into them.